Would you ever consider yourself to be an overthinker, where your whole life is ruled and dictated and controlled by two words? What if? If so, let's talk about it. What is up, everyone? It is good to see you. My name is Anthony Garola. If you clicked on this video, first of all, thank you. I am very new on this YouTube journey, and so any likes, shares, subscriptions, anything like that is such a huge blessing to me. But back to the topic at hand. It's a fun one: anxiety. Yeah. Now, if you clicked on the video, there's a good chance that you may have actually had some anxiety clicking on the video. And I'll tell you why. Because here's the thing, at least for me, anxiety is not just being nervous for the sake of being nervous. It's actually a deeper rooted issue. And that issue is, I'm sorry, but control. You see, anxiety is, for me at least, is the evidence that I haven't included God. Because when God is included, He has to take control. Now, I'm not saying you can never be a believer and never struggle with anxiety. See, I've wrestled with it for over 20 years. And this is my personal story. But what I am saying to you is you were never meant for anxiety. You were never meant to live within that control where your every movement is dictated by your emotions and not by the Holy Spirit. You were not meant for that. 1 John 4:18 says this. Now, I love this verse. There is no fear in love. If you're at home watching, just say it with me. There's no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love. Beloved, I want to tell you right now, you were made by love and for love. Now, I think this is a beautiful example where fear is often punishment and control based. Oftentimes I think of my daughters, like me being their father. They don't fear me. Even when I discipline them, I never punish them. And yes, they don't always listen or they don't always behave, but I don't punish them to hurt them, to make them feel small or little. I discipline them, but ultimately they know that I love them. And because of the love that I have for them, there's no room for fear, because fear is rooted in punishment and love is rooted in Jesus. And I carry Jesus with me, so when they know that even when they're not listening and they're going to be disciplined by dad, they know that Jesus is in dad. And so therefore there is no fear within that love. But sometimes fear creeps in. When we think God is not big enough to handle our struggle. We think, well, we're a little too messy for that kind of grace. We're a little too messy for that love. God's love is not big enough to handle our struggle. So we try to take back control that was never meant to be ours. And deep down, we try to avoid punishment by taking on control because we know we are meant for something greater and we just don't want to mess up, to do something just more with our life. And at that moment, sometimes that voice creeps in and says, what if? It accuses, and the overthinking just starts rolling in. God tells you to do something, and then the voice of accusation says, what if everything goes wrong? And then with a little shift, just the smallest shift of our gaze from His promises to our problems, overthinking snowballs. It snowballs into an avalanche of emotions raging with fear. And there's no fear in that love. This is not what you were made for. Beloved, one who is listening to this, if you label yourself an overthinker, I want to tell you right now, you were made and designed by God to be a dreamer. Why? Because that same creative energy that you've been using to think of a worst possible scenario was first designed by God to imagine the best possible outcome. Listen, if we are made in the image of God, we are not only share His likeness, but His character, His emotions, His heart, His thoughts. If we share the very thoughts of God, I want to tell you, God does not have a single worried thought. And if God is not worried, why do we? I remember one time, right around when my wife and I first moved to Tennessee, my wife Ashley was pregnant with our first child, and we were living in basically a box, but a 30-foot camper trailer. And it was early one morning. The Lord just randomly woke me up and said, listen to I'll Give Thanks by House Fires. Now, I thought I knew what this song was, but I'd actually never heard it before. And upon listening to it, it was beautiful, but the bridge spoke to me so special and so significantly. It says, God's not worried, so why do I worry? Now, at this point in my life, I feel like I had a lot to be worried about. I moved to a brand new state with a new church, a new baby, no jobs, that's a fun one. And to top it off, the entire world was shut down for a global pandemic. Yet, in all of that I could have been worried about, Yahweh, God, was never once moved or unsettled. In fact, during the world worrying, he had dreams that he wanted to impart to me, dreams that had I been so consumed with the noise of fear, I never would have heard the whisper of his peace. Now at this time, I was making paintings and selling them on the internet. It was something I felt the Lord told me to do. I felt I was decent at it, and so I did it. So I was selling everything I made, and actually I felt like I was making a pretty decent income. And my thoughts, my world said, this is good. Keep doing this. This is successful. Keep going. But how many of y'all know that Yahweh's thoughts are actually a lot higher than our thoughts? And so one day, as I'm enjoying my success, God interrupts me with a whisper of what I can only describe as peace. And he says, stop what you're doing. Buy an iPad and do digital art. Now, this is something I had no idea how to do, much like YouTube right now. And I didn't even own a single Apple product. I was team Android for a long time. And I really didn't have the extra $1,200 to drop on a risky word from the Lord. But that was just the thing. With God, there's no risk. And that was a hard lesson to learn. With a word from God, it's not a risk, it's his dream. His dream that he may be glorified and lifted up, where honestly, most of the people, including me, spend a lot of their time, and that is online. So I said, yes, I bought the iPad. I made several crappy designs, but I was faithful. I was being faithful, and I kept believing in his dream, believing in his holy version of what if. Not crippled by doubt, but gripped by wonder. And pretty soon I'd throw those on the internet, and things would start to blow up for me on Instagram. And all of a sudden I saw these little digital doodles I was doing go all over the entire world. Art that was glorifying him and representing him was being shared in church services and prisons and even war zones. And this was the dream of God, a dream that I never would have heard if I had fought it with my wall and barrier of what ifs. What if no one cares? What if no one likes, shares, follows, subscribes? What if I just don't? What if I just don't do it? Well, if I didn't, then I wouldn't be sitting here and you wouldn't be watching there, because this is the next step in that dream of God, to take what was formed within me in personal devotion and make it a public declaration that Jesus is good. And Jesus's goal, his vision, his heart is on earth as it is in heaven. We're on the earth. Heaven is accessible to us, and he has a dream for it, and that dream is you. It includes you. It includes me. We're all part of the dream of God, because we are earth and he is the heavens. And so that is a holy collision. And yeah, you could think of all the what if it doesn't work, what if this, what if that, what if the whole world shuts down. Well, I want to tell you, God is love, and there's no fear in love. And so if God's not worried, you don't need to be worried. There is no risk with God. There's only better than you can ask or imagine. Y'all, beloveds, Thank you so much for tuning in. I just want to encourage you, if God has put a dream in your heart, take the risk. Take the risk. I know it feels like a risk here on earth, but in heaven it is obtainable. It is access. It is beautiful. He already sees the finished product. And guys, he is so faithful to complete the good work he started in you. But first, there has to be a work started in you. So just submit to that, submit to his dreams, and I think you'll start to see some pretty beautiful things. And again, if you feel like you're an overthinker, if you feel like you're just full of anxiety and riddled with worry, I want you to take a look at whatever dream God's put in your heart. Look at it with his eyes, breathe with his breath, and look through the lens of peace. If God is not worried about it, you do not need to be worried about it. Guys, I love you so much. You're amazing. Have a beautiful day. We'll talk soon. Peace.